Hi, welcome into this Telstra virtual event. I'm Justin Cleveland, and today we're talking about apps and some of the things that you can do with apps within your business. It seems today that there is just about an app for everything, and that means that, well, there are apps for everything. But what are some of the must-have apps in your business? We are going to talk about that and also take your questions. You'll see a Q&A box on your screen. I want you to submit your questions early and often. In fact, you will drive a lot of the conversation here today. And joining me here today to talk, I want to welcome in, first of all, Tim Otten. He is the General Manager of Cloud Strategy and Platforms here at Telstra.
Thanks, Justin. Good afternoon.
Also joining us on the line is Soren Reichelt. He is a solution consultant with Byte. Welcome in, Soren.
Thanks, Justin. Cheers.
Excellent. And I am Justin Cleveland. And before we get too far into things, I do want to tell you some of the things you can do on the Telstra Virtual Events platform. Feel free to resize and move around the boxes as you see fit. Also, along the bottom of your screen, you will see a Resources tab. You can download a copy of today's presentation. Good news, if you miss any of today's presentation, feel free to come back and watch it on demand after about an hour after the show is done today. And again, before we jump too far into the topic, I want to ask you in the audience a question, and that is, how do you manage access to cloud applications for your business? Do you manage centrally? Do you manage by policy? Or do you have no management process in place? And Tim, I'm going to turn to you now. How do you see the burgeoning apps marketplace working in terms of employing it for your business?
Thanks, Justin. Look, we identified, I guess, some time ago, the opportunity for applications in businesses, not only the traditional delivery method, but particularly being able to take software as a service, the advantages that gave in terms of access to new apps, the sort of capability that enterprises have had for a long time. But enabling that through into small business and enabling small business to take advantage of ways of automating some of their processes, the way of optimising some of their worker productivity, and enabling collaboration in the business. So for us, it was a really important step forward for Telstra to be able to bring together a range of applications for businesses and actually be very specific about curating those. So selecting applications that we found were going to be really relevant to businesses and enable them to improve their productivity, their efficiency of their business, and so forth. So very important for us, and we started this back in 2008. So we've been on a long journey to do that. It's a lot of learnings on the way, obviously, and if you think back 2008 in cloud years, that's 7 years, but maybe 50 years in cloud terms. So we've learned a lot on the way, and that's the sort of expertise we want to bring to businesses, and not only working with our customers, but also with the providers to our customers. How can they optimise their services, the way they deliver them, the way they integrate them, and so on, for delivery to our customers. So it's a long journey for us, but for us, the Apps Marketplace, where we bring all these services to life, is a really critical foundation capability for us as we move more into the cloud world at Telstra.
Yeah, so let's get the results of that poll. And as a matter of fact, one of them has disappeared on me. How do you manage access to cloud applications for your business? You manage by policy, or it looks like about 2/3 have no management process in place. So that actually, one of them didn't go missing. One of them was a 0. So it looks like 2/3 have no management process in place, which I find interesting, but not terribly surprising because it is such a new field.
Yeah, and that's right. So a lot of, something shifted in the last 10 years where we had much better applications at home than we did at work in many circumstances, and maybe not for every business need, but for a lot of needs around collaboration and business productivity. So we started to see a lot of end users in the business start to take advantage of that in the work environment. And rightly so. A lot of the time they were more functional, certainly easier to use, but that brings risk with it. How do you manage the proliferation of these apps in the business? So again, that's something we're very conscious of with the Apps Marketplace, trying to give businesses a way to manage that proliferation in their business. So they still have control over what people are using, but actually they're able to give their end users more flexibility in what they're able to use. So well, a lot of value for that particular use case as well in the marketplace.
A lot of us view apps still as sort of mobility and mobile technology focused. So your phone, your tablet, and not necessarily for the computer. Help me understand the difference between a mobile app and one that is dedicated for an enterprise use and that we use on our laptop.
Yeah, so it's an interesting differentiation because it's not so different anymore. I think if you go back 2, 3, 4 years, you had web apps which were available via the internet, but generally desktop focused or browser based. And then you had on-device applications where either the application obviously sat on the mobile device or the client sat on the mobile device, and it was still back-ended as a delivered over the internet kind of application, but still. Now we're starting to see the convergence. And really, for us, in many ways, mobile is cloud. So we're stopping, really that dual view of mobile or SaaS apps or however you want to do it, and looking to push both of those through the same delivery mechanism and giving customers the same level of control. I'm very conscious that, in fact, one of the great values applications bring is the mobility aspect, so enabling customers to mobilise applications. And I think if I bring one of the apps that Telstra use, we have a very big internal ERP system that manages all our HR, all the approvals, all of those kind of things. Pretty clunky system. You could only use it when you're at your desktop. If you had to do leave approvals and so forth, it was all very difficult and unwieldy. Now that's been mobilised, so the front end of that app has been made mobile and available to people, and it's very easy to undertake those activities. And in fact, it's I wouldn't say it's a pleasure to do, but it's a lot easier than it used to.
Right.
It's not quite the trial it was a few years back. Yeah.
So do you see the proliferation of tablets? I mean, I don't think anytime soon tablets are going to necessarily replace computers, but do you see that technology sort of allowing us to be a bit freer within our businesses because we can take our work perhaps on the go, and it's easy to set up a tablet with a keyboard and be able to write and easily move that between devices?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty again of having software as a service, is that access is near universal. It doesn't matter whether you're in the office, on the road, as long as you've got an internet connection, you're getting access to the same data, and you're also able to collaborate and stay in touch with people and collaborate on the same data and files. So in terms of that mobility angle, we see huge benefit, and not only from that aspect of accessibility, but productivity. We've got many instances of some of the healthcare or aged care customers we work with. People maybe had to take their case file notes out to the customer. They would then go and see their client, fill in the file notes, then come back to the office, put that into the system. Now, on reflection, that just seems ridiculous, but that's the way a lot of these business processes work. So you can imagine the productivity increase when all of that was done on the road, and instead of coming back to the office, you were free to, and these people are talking about freeing up something like 20-25% of additional time, which means they see more clients, and these people get get to see their family more often too, which is really important. So yeah, it's that mobility angle is absolutely critical and foundational to where we're going with the apps marketplace.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the reasons that you focus in on the curated aspect is for the security, and obviously for going between devices, there is the potential for breach, for loss, and one of the reasons that you've gone through this process to find the right apps is you're looking after security. I mean, what kind of security is offered in cloud and through the apps marketplace so that we can keep all of this business-critical data secure?
Yeah, so the first point you say is right. We only work with really the top tier of providers. It's very careful when we look at the selection of the ISVs, the software providers that we work with, that not only the platform that they are hosting their application on, but the way they've architected the application is secure. Now, that's not always everything you need in terms of security. So I guess some other aspects that we work with are enabling direct connectivity through to the software as a service provider. So Office 365, Microsoft is an example of that, where we're very close to launching that capability. A couple of other things we do are looking at encryption of data, both in transit and at rest. Now, it's quite hard to go and encrypt data at the software as a service provider, but if you can encrypt that in transit, and also enable customers to keep a copy, an encrypted copy of that as well. That's just a way of de-risking some of these elements of software as a service. So inherently, look, it's safe, software as a service, but if we can manage these risks even further, particularly for some industry sectors that have compliance or regulatory regimes that they need to adhere to, that can only help. So we offer those types of services to customers to de-risk. I guess the thing for Telstra is we want to enable people on the cloud journey, and not for the sake of necessarily cost savings, but more so for the agility it gives them, the flexibility and agility that customers can get out of cloud is a step change from where most of us are today in terms of having to spend capital. That's not news to anyone, but actually if you can adopt that fully within the business and transform your business around it, you know, it's not as easy as just plugging in some great new cloud IT. You've got to transform your business around it. But the options open, the flexibility, the more efficient delivery model for business. It is phenomenal, and then that's what people need to compete today. You know?
Yeah, and you mentioned the productivity aspect, and that's one of the reasons that apps are so popular, is that it helps us put time back in our days and just do our jobs a little bit better. And one of the things that I think it's important to remember, too, is that it also standardizes that. And not, look, just in your business, not always are you going to have the app that you perhaps love the most, but having everybody use the same thing limits a lot of risk, because I love Google Drive, I love Dropbox, I love Box, but having everybody on the secure box means that a lot of the files that we're sharing are a lot more secure.
So a lot of the security risks in a business these days, well, you know, the external security risks do continue to go, but a lot of it's internal, you know, and it's not any necessarily done out in purpose, but, you know, people who are leaving the company and left documents on Google Drive, you know, sensitive documents. It's a personal service. This person moves to the next company, they still have access to all of that. So unless you have those kind of processes and systems in place to manage that, you are exposing yourself to risk, undoubtedly. And that's something that we do try and enforce through the Apps Marketplace, give companies the ability to line everyone up on those same services and mitigate the risk and the spread of what's called shadow IT.
Right.
So people using IT outside the knowledge and security and increasingly importantly, integration architecture of the business. Because not only do you want these apps to be secure, you want them to be able to talk to each other. Yeah. And that's another area that we're starting to get very focused on in the Apps Marketplace.
Yeah, and this may seem like a bit of a brutish question, but one of the reasons I have been slow personally to adopt Office 365 is because I don't like the idea of a subscription service. I liked the old days when I had to drop down $400 or $500 for my copy. Well, I didn't like those old days, but you know, I liked that feeling of ownership. Yeah. One of the things I know some businesses are wary to do is to enter into that longer-term relationship. Why is this sort of model a good thing for a business?
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of advantages, of course. So you reduce that upfront cost. So, you know, you're able to adopt the service quickly. You're able to scale quickly. So if you have new employees or you need to reduce the number of services assigned, that's done very quickly. And you're aligning, you know, out of that, you're aligning your cost to your utilisation of a service. So you're getting much lower risk in terms of your investment and cost profile over time. And I think more than that, the ability to take advantage of the latest and greatest version of the service. So we all know how complicated it can be to migrate from one version of a service to another. You've got to pay, maybe you've got to pay for new hardware, maybe you've got to pay for new licensing, maybe you've got to pay for someone to come and do the migration of the service, maybe you've got to pay for someone to run a dual copy while you do that migration. Maybe you've got to train your users on this. The beauty of SaaS is the iterative nature of it, and that you will get constant life cycle enhancements. Yeah. And look, that's a reason why vendors see value too, because they know that a lot of their customers are not receiving the full value of their applications. How many people are on an older version of Outlook or Excel or something and not receiving the benefits, all the hard work Microsoft's put in to improve that software? Right. People are not realising it. Yeah. So it's a benefit for customers. Vendors see a lot of value in and this is how vendors will increasingly compete, not with the cost, because that's where cloud started in some sense. It started with cost. Right. But vendors will compete on functionality. That's where they'll win the game. And so this will drive a lot more vendor innovation, constant innovation out of vendors. And I think that's exciting. And as pardon me, as you've already seen with the move to Windows 10 to get its subscription, we're not going to see these great leaps forward anymore. What we're going to see is a lot of really great, small, in some cases, but iterative developments. And that's going to be good for everyone. Because as I said, you don't have this great shift change. You're going to have a good innovation cycle. Pardon me. We're also going to not have to train people and things like that. So I think the benefits of SaaS across many axes, the agility customers get, the alignment with cost to usage, the decreased risk, but also access to innovation, those kind of things. So I think that's what's really exciting for me, just giving flexibility, the ability to innovate.
Yeah. So I want to bring Soren into this conversation because, Soren, you're out there actually working with companies on the ground who are facing business challenges. What do you see as some of the biggest problems that companies are facing?
Look, I think obviously investing in new technologies and finding that funding to do it, that's always been a challenge for business. So I've sort of, as we're out there, we're seeing companies now trying to say, okay, well, how do we find the right solution now that I've got all this choice? The problems they're trying to solve are things like, how do I change my business model? How do I use technology to improve my services? And what we're noticing is that you see a lot of businesses adopting applications without fully understanding or integrating those applications in as well. So I suppose the challenge that we see in business a lot is trying to get a good handle on what the journey looks like for them from really a digital transformation perspective. So they're turning into digital businesses and operating in this new economy. So that challenge is, well, how do we do that and what's that path?
Yeah, so there's a lot of information that I think we're going to throw at you right now. And just a reminder, you can download a copy of this pack there in the Resources tab on the front of your screen. But 67% of users want to use their mobile devices to, say, complete retail transactions. Because, listen, we have it on us all the time. We assume it's secure. So one of the things that we're focusing on doing is enhancing that relationship with a customer. Which I don't think is necessarily something that we think about, particularly in an office environment. We're worried about the people who are around us and doing our job, but ultimately we're serving someone else.
Yeah, and I think there's so many more opportunities to really become more intimate with customers, from analytics and social media and so forth. And I think one area that people are conscious of but really haven't leveraged to the hilt is the digital channels for both, whether you're selling as a kind of a retail proposition or even services, being able to access a digital channel to broaden your reach and use tools like email marketing to really get in touch with customers, start to want to, push offers out to them, maintain communications, just maintain a relationship with customers. And we see some businesses the businesses that are good at that are really reaping the benefits. So I think if you look at smaller business, it's really the 1 or 2% who are gaining the majority of the the vast spend of e-commerce, the vast proportion, of e-commerce spend. So becoming active in that, thinking of an omni-channel experience. So not only are you maybe selling your goods or services via bricks and mortar, or through partners or whatsoever, but also you're looking at eBay stores, or you're looking at online kind of transaction engines. Keeping in touch with your customers through digital channels is really key, and then using all the insights you gain from that, to start to profile your customers, profile your offers, I think is really important.
Yeah. So Soren, if somebody came to you with this issue saying, I want to be better at interacting with my customers, where would you start a recommendation there to enhance that from the digital side?
Look, I suppose the first point would be to understand how do you measure, or how do you understand, or what do you know about your customers today? So finding tools that allow you to, number one, connect with your customers. I think that's important. You've got to create that community, that digital community. But then to understand who they are, what do they do personally. Connecting on these new platforms, people are expecting you now to have that personal touch, if you like, around. Okay, so here I am. I like these things. I like these brands, and I've got these issues. How can you come and connect with me, or connect with me at a level where you're going to assist me to achieve what I want to achieve personally, but also to achieve what we want to achieve as a business. So the first step really is to create a community around it and a theme around it that's supporting your customers from an online perspective, and then start analysing and understanding, well, who are they, and how can we connect and create more dialogue with them?
It's fascinating because there are so many ways that now we can connect with anyone, anywhere, almost at any time, and yet as a business, we're slow to adopt that for whatever reason, be it intrusiveness or whatever. But
and there's great tools, Radian 6 and others from some of the Salesforce tools are very good at monitoring what's going on out in the world across multiple social media platforms, give you an insight into what the customers are saying about you, and that's it's a sort of level of insight that you don't often get from your typical engagements with customers. Other tools we use are SurveyMonkey. How do you quickly get a survey out to customers, email that out, and then email marketing tools to start to present offers and constructs to them, like Cake Mail or Campaign Monitor, a tool that we sell through the marketplace. So they're all great tools that you can very easily adopt, very simple to use, and really start to deepen that customer engagement. The sort of insights, you can start to take your insights at a broad level, say from the social media, then start to target in around some questions using one of the survey tools, and then start to send out ideas, offers, constructs to customers through some email marketing, and try those in different ways. Be agile. Try an offer with this subset of customers, try an offer with that subset of customers, and it's done at such low cost. And this is the beauty of cloud and this kind of engagement model. No longer do you have to kind of just try and determine the answer before you do something. You can test in the market, and with cloud you can afford to fail or test somewhat. Whereas, when we used to spend big capital up front, we had to know pretty much what the answer was before we started. And if we got the answer wrong, it was very hard to change. This is a way for us to be very adaptive and agile, and I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, well, and you can make more particular recommendations based on a person's patterns and habits.
Exactly,
and look, and as much as I may not like Big Brother, I actually love the idea of knowing that I love craft beer, and that on Thursdays I go get craft beer, and if you make an offer to me on a Wednesday, I might also consider going on Wednesdays. So, those sorts of things are very useful, and it's about
Sound
being...
like you've been watching Big Brother at my house.
Well,
that's Thursdays.
Well, so it's one of the important things, I think, though, is you need to understand your customer and be able to be reactive to their needs.
Exactly, and that's the immediacy of this kind of feedback. I think that's what's exciting.
Yeah, so let's move on a bit into the managing cash flow aspect. And one of the reasons we do this is because it's a problem that's faced by every business, no matter who you are, and that's getting paid for the services or products that you have rendered. 70% of people, of businesses, have faced a late and I'm wondering what's the deal with those other 30% if they're just extraordinarily lucky. But faced that late payment. It's an issue that we here at Telstra obviously deal with as well. What are ways that cloud apps can help us get paid and get paid on time?
Yeah, there's various ways to look at this, and from optimizing your costs and reducing the risk, and with accounts payable and so forth, and also at the other extreme, looking at your customers and who makes a good customer and who doesn't. So, we look at that as a broader spectrum. And I think, from the start, trying to integrate the kind of credit assessment process as part of that. When you are starting to engage customers, say, tools like Creditor Watch and so forth that give you access to credit reports, and you're able to assess the creditworthiness of potential customers. So I
hadn't even thought of that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so that's a way to de-risk up front. And then I think, and this is where the cloud kind of accounting software is going, is really starting to get a real-time view into your business. So what are your outgoings? What are your incomings? What's your debtor profile look like? What is your cash flow looking like? And then starting, so, the online accountings like Xero and QuickBooks Online and MYOB and so forth and SASU are really starting to enable that. And then there's some of the really nice kind of visualization tools working off the top of those accounting systems that give you a deeper insight. I always find the difference between looking at data visualization versus reports of Excel, it's just so much easier to get an instant grasp of what's going on looking at visualized data. So there's some really good data visualization tools specifically made to sit on top of those accounting software apps too that I think are really great. So it's kind of taking it all through, and Soren will probably talk about optimizing your own costs to reduce that risk as well. So taking a sort of an expansive view of that. It's not just about narrowing in on and it is very important to get a real-time view of your business versus going to your accountant once a month and getting sort of a retrospective. But yeah, looking end to end at this, how you can manage across different elements of that risk profile.
Right, you don't want somebody 30 days in saying, oh, by the way, 75% of our accounts are overdue.
Yeah.
If you can get that update earlier, you can action it earlier,
Exactly
which hopefully will fill the coffers.
Exactly right.
But yeah, Soren, let's talk about some of the optimization aspect and how do we, de-risk transactions within our business. And like you mentioned, using sort of a credit history is a great start, but how can we be better at that?
Look, I suppose from a application perspective, having the ability to automate and then start understanding more about what is our process from the time that someone purchases something and then places that order to the time we get paid. Being able to use applications that solve problems and streamline that workflow is really important to improving, ultimately, or de-risking your cash flow. Moving to a model where you're now procuring services from a cloud aspect where they can scale up and scale down based on business demand. That also too allows you to say, okay, well, based on what our demand is, we can scale our business up and down as well with the cost that marries to what our demand is as well. So from an application perspective in de-risking it, it's really about understanding, well, the application can take me from a point where I have very manual processes and very little visibility, as Tim said, to an application where I'm now automating, giving people the ability to pay me at any time 24/7, but I can also too see where payments are going. I can see when payments are coming in and take action and respond faster.
Yeah, Soren makes some really good points there, I think, around payments and automation of that workflow. So we've been working with a solution which, crudely we call quote to cash, but it's enabling a service provider, could be tradesman, could be anybody, but able to produce a quote for someone, to push that through DocuSign to get the customer to sign it, push it into something like Box for storage, and then actually have it come out of that into an invoicing system that can then be pushed through to a mobile payments. So in a way, you could actually stand there with a customer, produce a quote, they agree on it, get the work done, then come back, invoice, payment, mobile payment, all there. So you've got the customer there, you're actually able to do the invoice, and process the payment at the very same time as you stand there with the customer. And I think that's a great way of trying to ensure you get those payments as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about. Nobody wants to wait 30, 45, 60 days to get payments into the business. Mm-hmm. One of the other aspects I think that Telstra does try and help with this, and I like to think as a big business we can maybe help some of our customers avoid the bumps on the road, so to speak, is having flexible payment options. So if a customer wants to pay for a subscription to a service on an annual basis, they want to pay up front, we can accommodate that. If they want to break down what is actually an annual subscription, so some of our applications have a sort of a one-time charge. Mm-hmm. If they want to break that down, and actually services is a big area, so migration services that are either delivered by Telstra or our partners, and primarily our partners, if we can take what is an upfront payment but amortise it, in other words, turn it into a monthly payment to the customer and make it a bit easier, we do that too. Mm-hmm. So I like to think Telstra, as I said, as a large organisation with a fair bit of cash flow, can absorb the bumps for smaller businesses. And you'll actually hear a lot more about how we're trying to bring this idea of a services kind of marketplace together that makes it a lot easier for our customers to transact in the coming months too, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, so I have a question for you in the audience, and that is, what is the real value you see with applications? And this has popped up on your screen. Select all that applies. It provides you the ability to expand your business, creates an efficient and productive business, and or helps cut IT costs. And there are a lot of, I think, valuable benefits to applications, particularly dealing in that realm of productivity. But I also want to talk about it in terms of disruption and innovation. And it's one of the, I mean, we see it on LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere. You know, Uber owns no cars, Airbnb owns no hotels. As cliche as it has become, it's also very, very true, and business is changing very rapidly. I think apps can help deal with that.
Yeah, I like to think so, and that's, you know, when we look at the rationale for being in the apps marketplace is to make businesses more efficient and agile, and to make them as productive as they can be. You know, we're in a globalised market in many senses, and we're competing against a raft across many industries of disruptors who are coming in enabled in the same fashion. They didn't have to spend a lot of money to build hardware. They didn't have to spend a lot of money to scale their business. They didn't have to spend a lot of money to go global. You know, it was an idea that was brought to fruition on the back of, you know, minimal investment in many cases. So it's very important, I think, that businesses are setting themselves up with that same sort of agility and are starting to use that, as I said before, with the kind of email marketing ideas and starting to bring insights from their customer base, starting to think a bit outside of the box about how they can innovate, change the way they deliver services, become more customer friendly, you know, make it easier for customers to transact. And we know that most people in many cases want to transact online. You know, they want that self-service. They want to be able to get home, do it at 11 o'clock at night. So just thinking about the way you can innovate on a business, on a delivery angle. So what you do now, but make it a more efficient delivery model, more customer-centric delivery model, and a more automated one. It's a more immediate kind of experience for customers. But also, how can you innovate? How can you change the kind of offers and constructs that you're taking to your customers? And I think, you know, that requires, particularly with the kind of digital disruption going on, that requires more agile systems to underpin you. And really, you know, if you look at mobile, cloud and analytics, that is going to be the technology platform for business innovation for some time to come. And it's really, IT is starting to deliver on the promises of decades and decades ago. The way that, you know, we are able to access services anyway, the way that we can have it whenever we want, the way that these are starting to integrate between each other to truly provide integration relatively easy between apps, and the insights that we're able to start to get out of analytics. Now, analytics is still a bit of a promise, but at the end of the day, you know, it's going to work, and there's already a lot of insights you can start to pull out of those apps that I was talking about before, just out of social media. So where things are architected the right way, and they increasingly are, APIs and open standards and so on, we are really seeing the promise delivered. So it's a great new platform that's emerging for innovation, great deal of business flexibility, and I think the interesting part is the way what's called microservices are going, but the ability to break down applications and take bits and pieces from numerous areas. You know, we're able to innovate using other people's components, and people are able to innovate and integrate using components that we may have. You know, and I say we, being the business owner, you know, it's a very flexible environment. So, you know, innovation and ideas are going to win at the end of the day.
Well, what you just mentioned a minute ago about, you know, all of the steps being taken care of, those aren't necessarily a single vendor. It's multiple vendors playing well together. And I think that's important, that they have to be designed or be selected because they work well together, because just picking the ones that are shiny, it just isn't going to work.
Yeah, and you know, that's, I think, sorry, we're starting to see the integrated horizontal one vendor model break down, and it's multiple different people playing together well. And you even see it now, even the big vendors, IBM and HP and on it goes, are starting to really open up in support of the open source community, and starting to open up their interfaces, because they know if they don't, this is one of those big disruptions that happens every 30 or 40 years in IT, and if they're not on board with that, they won't be around in the future. So
Soren, now mobile technology, to my mind, is the most disruptive piece of technology, and I think it's fantastic. So what do we as a business do to take advantage of this?
So Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I missed that, mate.
Mobile technologies are extremely disruptive. What do we do as a business, to take advantage of the disruptions that they provide?
Look, I think, number one, you need to know and be understanding what's happening in those areas, right? So making sure, again, it feeds back into probably developing a digital strategy and understanding and having a mobile strategy as well around how do we connect with customers on these new platforms, but also to leverage the new applications that are coming for us to drive our products and services through them. So the reality is today we've all got a mobile phone with us all the time, and we're always connected. So businesses are looking to these technologies to say, okay, not only can I connect with customers now at any time, also too, I've now got a medium where I can sell. Extending your sales force and delivery teams out with applications that allow them to better service customers and improve the customer experience, I think that's a really big one around, okay, well, now I'm in front of the customer and I've got all of these applications from the business with me. I can now facilitate a much better experience with the customer by that mobile technology. So people are investing in it to not only connect with customers in a better way, but also to facilitate more transactions.
So where do you see the most disruption coming from? I mean, what's the most disruptive piece that's out there right now?
The most disruptive piece? I mean, I've got a view on that one in terms of now you've got applications that are popping up, creating effectively what is C2C, consumer-to-consumer transactions. You call Airbnb one of those exactly. It owns no hotels. All it does is connect a consumer to a consumer to facilitate. So those sorts of things are changing business models completely. And therefore organisations need to start adopting and changing their path to make sure they can either enter into that market or create their own level of disruption.
It's a fascinating time. It's also a little bit scary for those who have been reliant on customers coming to them as a business to get something. Now I can make it, I can put it on a website, Etsy, and somebody somewhere is going to buy it. And that's it's both fascinating and terrifying. It
is, and that's those businesses that are adapting and creating value. There are those kind of platform businesses that often create the ecosystem to engage participants around their capability. So it's interesting that platform business model. It's not for everyone. It's not obviously going to be the case for every business that they need to adapt.
It's not a cafe. You can't just come over to my house and I'll cook you eggs and coffee.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe if
no.
Yeah, I could come over and use your oven or something like that. But it is one that's a tortured analogy, that, wasn't it? It's one that it's a business model where people are starting to create those environments and those associations and bring together communities. I think it's very interesting and one that everyone can think about. Can I be an enabler of connectivity between others and can I add value in that transaction? I think just talking about mobility too, sorry to go back, it's really exciting to see our sales force become more mobilised too and starting to use for real the apps that we're selling as well. So, we do all of our contracts via DocuSign. Now, sometimes you think, as simple as signing a contract, that's not a burden. But this smooths the process so much. It's incredible that you can do this electronically and manage the workflow. So, some contracts require 4 or 5, however many parties to sign. Piece of paper or a scanned document has to go around via email. You're always waiting on people. This just really makes that process so easy. So, it doesn't sound like much, but it really smooths that process for us. We also use Box for storage of these, so, that's really easy. Our salespeople can access it anywhere, and then whoever's authorised within the company to access it, it's all in one place. Great, very secure. We access it using our own internal corporate ID, very easy. And the other one I like anyway is a very small but local guys called Canvas, who provide a great way to take sales collateral and training material around. So our salespeople always have the latest sales collateral on their tablet. They have training and updates. It's a really great way to keep the sales team engaged, and they've kind of gamified it as well. So, you know, if salespeople do, you know, read this or do this training course, they're in league tables against it. So that's incredibly effective, particularly for people like sales teams who are rather competitive. So, you know, little apps like that. And I love the gamification that's occurring around apps too.
Yeah.
That's taking it to another level. So we talk a lot about customer experience. Let's make it interesting and fun to use. Gamification takes it to another level where people actually want to use it, which is, you know, unheard of, you know, for CRM systems and things like that. But that's sort of the path that the more forward thinking ISVs and developers are going, which is great.
Well, I mean, if you gamify, you give points for filling in email addresses of all of the people within a company.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure, that's fun at first, but you know what? Marketers are going to love that down the road. Your company is going to love that down the road when somebody leaves your customer. So yeah, there's a lot of potential out there. So in looking at the results, the real value that people see in applications is that perhaps most important is that it creates an efficient and productive business. So we're ultimately coming back to that productivity aspect.
Yeah, it's not surprising.
No. So moving on into that productivity and work-life balance, this is one thing that apps afford us as well. And Tim, I've been starting with you constantly, and Soren, instead I'm going to go out to you and talk about using mobility for that balance. When I had a job where for about 3 years I worked from home, which was great at first because I didn't have to get up, I didn't have to, you know, shower and shave, I could just walk over to the office. But when I started taking 2 o'clock in the morning calls from India, it became a problem. So apps do obviously afford us a lot of potential, but how do we balance this out, and how can apps help us create that work-life balance?
Yeah, I suppose I was actually reading an article the other day around the working week is now 7 days, but maybe the hours are less. That was the idea in the article. But the reality is that now, these days, it doesn't matter where we are, we need to be able to connect and we need to be able to work. So the business demands effectively saying, okay, well, the customer's now here, he needs help. So what cloud allows you to do is to unlock users from their desks and effectively create an environment where you can be anywhere doing exactly what you need to do and doing what you need to do to service customers in the right way. So in terms of a work-life balance structure, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, by automating and making things a lot simpler for users to connect from anywhere, you're then therefore giving them less time where they need to be geographically here. You're looking for outcomes rather than time, and turning that model effectively on its head to a really an activity-based working, which I think has been around now, or we've been talking now for more than 10 years, but now it's starting to really be enabled by the mass adoption of these cloud applications.
Yeah, I think we're going to reach a point very quickly where it is no longer an issue of having enough work to do or enough time in the day to do your work. Apps are enabling us to do this work a lot faster. So we don't necessarily have to be in the office for 8 hours. We're still turning out that same amount of productivity, but we don't have to physically be in a place. And I think that's going to change a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I love to see the change in people's lifestyles and the ability to spend more time at home. You know, we've had some examples with people who used to have to travel a lot to visit doctors or so forth, you know, sort of a personal situation, but now can do it via video. We had situations where, I remember one lady at one particular company that we were working with had to do all the reporting after everyone had gone home at night because it chewed up so much time and as a resource of their servers. So she was often there till 11:30 at night. This is a lady with 3 young children. You know, this is not where she wants to be, clearly. But we were able to offer her a service. We did a reporting outside of the LAN environment, and you know, she was at home at a normal time with her children. So, you know, these are the things at the end of the day I like to think of that really matter to a lot of people. And cloud certainly gives you the flexibility, but more particularly some of the solutions that you can take you out of the daily grind that, you know, you don't need to be at the office. You can probably press go and then press stop, and that's all you need to be in the office for. But let's do that at home. You know,
right.
You don't really need to be there. So they're the stories I really like to hear. You know, people where it's actually made a difference as much to their, or more so to their personal lives than to the business. The business.
You always hear the story of the you stayed too long at work and it strained the relationship and it failed. You don't want to hear that. Yeah, if we can hear the opposite, it's great. Actually, though, one thing Mark pointed out, you thought, you said Canvas, but I think you meant Aris app was the gamification.
Oh, sorry,
yes.
Aris, yeah.
Yeah, so which actually, let's bring up Canvas, because I think that's a very useful tool, but that's for creation of the documents. So that works in that workflow along with DocuSign or Box.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the one where you get to create the documents and share them around. So yeah, again, we've tried to bring all these apps together that make sense in business workflows. One of the exciting things we're working on at the moment is the app-to-app integration. So some of these applications have native integrations, or they built integrations, sorry, more correctly, say between DocuSign and Office 365 and so forth, so enabling that. But more so, how do we start to bring together disparate apps into integrated workflows? So a lot of focus around e-commerce for that in particular. So how do you take an e-commerce site, integrate that with eBay, integrate that with an accounting and inventory system with a payment solution and so forth. So again, you kind of have that, as I said before, quote to cash kind of process really nicely integrated. So it's a big focus for us at the moment.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm worried about some people taking out of this is, we need to have apps in our business, which isn't necessarily true. It's we need to have the right apps in our business. And Soren, I'm going to turn to you, since these are the questions that you handle normally. It's where do you start in looking for an app for a business?
I suppose the first point is, number one, understanding from a business's perspective what the actual objective is for this change into the digital economy. How are we going to marry our business to a customer experience that's better? So you look at from a customer's perspective, what are the applications that we need to deploy that will help our customer and service our customer better? That first piece of work will obviously give you some ideas and some, okay, we want to connect like this, or we could solve this problem for the customer. But it'll ultimately guide where you then start looking at, okay, what are the areas where we then need to be mobile? What are the areas where we need more information? What are the areas where we need, obviously, cloud? Can we move to cloud? And start looking for applications that can solve business problems, solve problems for your customers at the same time, but also to integrate across that entire stack. So the first point's really to understand the needs of your business, so the business objectives and the requirements, and then from there look at, okay, how can we marry them into a customer, solving more problems for our customers, and then how do we integrate them into either what we're doing today or integrate them into other cloud applications in the future.
So what about the CIO that may have in the past been unwilling to make that transition because maybe job security, maybe just didn't want the hassle of this, new technologies and having to manage all of this? How do you have that conversation with a CIO or somebody in the IT department about how to roll this out in your business?
Well, see, these are the things that the business is looking for from IT. So traditionally, the CIOs purchased some infrastructure and we've managed to keep the business running. Now they're really looking for businesses to drive that change. So if anything, we're more talking to them about, okay, how can we transform the business and effectively raise the profile of IT within the business through these applications. IT ultimately adds significantly more value if it starts solving problems for different areas in the business, but also too for the customers as well.
Yeah, so that answers my follow-up question, which was how do we as an inspired CIO or IT manager make this change the business? And it's really talking about business process transformation.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for IT in a way because you're moving away from the drudgery of operations more into the enabling side of the business. And I think, if to make that mind shift is really important for IT, in that you are becoming, what's termed the broker, but you're the person who sits between the business and technology. You're not necessarily the technologist. You're the person who translates business requirements into technology needs. And in fact, comes back the other way, hopefully, and says, well, do you know now that we've got this sort of technology that you could do this, opening the eyes of the business? Because as I said before, one of the things we see a lot in customers is, I want cloud, I want cloud, I want cloud. And then they get cloud and but delivers on the promise, but perhaps the business isn't realising the benefits because it hasn't become agile around that. So, you know, it's in many respects, as Soren was alluding to, it's about business transformation, and IT has a role to move out of operate into being an enabler of business transformation, because there's a lot of strategists around, but there's not a lot of people executing on business transformation. So everyone can see what the big picture should look like. Not many people know how to get there. And in many respects, the IT shop can be the people who guide the business on how to get to where they want to go. So I think, as I said before, I think to be in IT, if you make that mind shift, it's a really exciting place to be, because cloud enables IT to get out of operate and into enablement and to help the business transform.
Without sounding glib, the answer to a lot of questions is there's an app for that. And I think the issue is now sifting through and sorting through all of the apps that are available to find the one that's right for your business. Yeah. That's one of the things that Telstra has done with the Telstra Apps Marketplace. Where do we get started with that? What's the best way to learn more?
Yeah, I think the easy way is to go online and have a look at the Telstra Apps Marketplace. So telstraappsmarketplace.com, very imaginative.
Easy.
Could be shorter, and have a look. But really, you know, I engaging with people like Byte IT, where Soren works, you know, the people who have insights into business transformation. I think also talk to your Telstra account exec. You know, we have business consultancy people within the organisation too. You know, we do some interesting transformation work. But you know, we deliberately rely on our partners who have a deeper business insight into the customers a lot of the time than Telstra does. But that's certainly a focus for Telstra as well, is you know, getting a more of an insight into the business and becoming more focused with say an industry point of view, rather than being a bit more horizontal in how we look at the market. So
Soren, you are out there, you're working with anyone and everyone, and I think one of the takeaways from that is simply that if you were not doing it, somebody else is, and that somebody could very well be one of your competitors.
Yeah, and you notice that it could be, now businesses are changing so quickly, or you have so many startups that are popping up as well, that you know, these business models are changing. So it's not about fear, it's about sitting down and understanding what the change is. So here are all the different areas that you can now communicate with customers. Here are the ways that applications can help you improve your customer's experience. But where do we start? And then what does that journey look like for the next year, 2, 5 years, as a part of an ongoing process? We sort of, well, when I'm talking to customers, it's more about you're no longer reinventing yourself every 5 years. You're now innovating consistently, and what you've got to do is build yourself into that model. So that only starts with a conversation, and then a bit of a plan on where you're going to get to.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, building on Soren's point, that innovate or die kind of thing is it's interesting. We have a couple of startup hubs, one here in Sydney, one in Singapore. And if you go and look at some of the business, you expect to walk in and see funky programmer people, and they are funky programmer people, but some of their ideas are pretty plain. They're not necessarily amazing ideas. They've just looked at an existing process or a business and said, well, there's a better way to do that. So, you know, it's not the case anymore where someone could have said, I know a better way to do that, but you can't do it because, you know, that business has already got the market, or it's too much, you know, the barrier to entry is too high. The barrier to entry is much, much, much lower than it used to be in many industries. You know, I wouldn't turn myself into a bank tomorrow, but in many industries it is. And this is the sort of thing that people, if they see a better way to do it, they're doing it, and they're writing an app, and that's often as much as you need. You know, if Uber, the case that everyone uses, but if you looked at Uber taking on the taxi industry, they have nothing. No cabs, no radio networks, nothing, no payment systems. But you know what? They built it because they provided a better customer experience. And Absolutely. It's as simple as that.
So with our last couple of minutes, I want to go around the room, and Soren, I'll start with you. I mean, the title of this was Must-Have Apps for Business. If you had to single out one app that you think your business cannot live without, or business perhaps should not live without, what would you say?
I'm going to put a very interesting application out there. I'm going to put out Meetup. Meetup's an application where it connects you to all of your, effectively, a community of people where you can host events and bring people to and connect with your brand. I'd say that's probably the number one in terms of that customer experience and customer intimacy.
Yeah, that's a self-selecting one too. I mean, I'm a member of more craft beer meetup groups than I should probably admit to, but it's the same idea, you know, that you've got people who are motivated and looking for information, and you can provide them a good experience. I think that's better than any advertising could be.
Yeah.
Tim?
Another classic of just providing the platform for people who are out there and wanted to engage. You know?
Yeah, they may not have known that you existed, and you invited them in the best way possible.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go the other side. I'll be really boring. And I'll say Office 365 for a hosted email, because there's no reason any of us should be hosting our own email anymore. It's just one of those services that we all have and use and value a lot, you know. But, you know, if you can go and get it at the price you can from Microsoft, fully managed, latest technology, very reliable, and not have to manage that yourself, I think that's the best spot to start for me.
Yeah, and for me it's Box, because I found that it's just an incredible tool for collaborating with people no matter where they are. You can set people and forget that they're there, but set them to expire so that, you know, you need them to have access for a month, they have access for a month. But it's also got a lot of the backup systems in place for security to ensure that the right people are getting access, which is very, very useful. So that is going to do it for us here for this Telstra virtual event. Again, if you have questions about different apps, about where to start, you know, you can reach out to Soren at Byte. You can reach out to Tim here at Telstra, or just head to marketplace.telstra.com to find out more about the Telstra Apps Marketplace. Or call your account executive. Call me up. Generally not after 2. That, you know, in the morning. That seems a little bit late, but there are a lot of ways to learn more information. It can seem overwhelming, but there are places you can go. And again, highly recommend the Telstra Apps Marketplace as a place to start. So that is going to do it for this Telstra virtual event. In just a moment, a survey is going to pop up. Let us know how we did and what you would like to hear more of in the future. For Tim Otten, for Soren from Byte, joining us on the phone from Melbourne, I'm Justin Cleveland, and this has been a Telstra virtual event.